If you don't know him, you absolutely should, because he is speaking the truth and silencing the left just about every single night on CNN.
Democrats who say, oh, in private meetings, I've seen Joe Biden do cartwheels and handstands while doing trigonometry while solving all the nation's problems. We now know that every single person who said that has been lying to the American people. One day Donald Trump couldn't hold a glass of water and we had like every medical person coming out of the woodwork. Should we have the 25th Amendment? Joe Biden could barely walk up the stairs. And I would argue, if you called Kentucky Fried Chicken and said, I'd like to interview Colonel Sanders. Now his face is on the bucket. He doesn't make the chicken anymore. In fact, he's not even alive anymore. This is what the Democrats are asking people to do. Vote for the face on the bucket. He was fine and he's strong and then he's fine today. Nobody believes that. And I just think at some point, then why isn't he running?
Yeah. It's organic. The entire Kamala Harris campaign has been organic. And so now we're...
What? Organic. This is the literal most manufactured presidential campaign ever. She didn't even run. Well, quite a few people will vote for Harris, so I think we should all open up a head examination doctor's office. We'll have plenty of people to...
In all those Honestly, I could watch those clips every single day on repeat. Scott Jennings is what makes it must-see TV. He actually started off at the University of Louisville as a journalism major, but he's always loved politics, so the fact that he now gets to blend his two passions together every night in an effort to make America great again is so cool to watch. Scott Jennings is a patriot. He is an incredible debater. And as I found out today, he's an even better person. Scott Jennings, the star of this week's episode of The Sage Steele Show. Do you like my screensaver?
That's really cool.
I mean, this was, I'll show you later, David, but this was something, I feel like when I'm in Washington, D.C., I could keep my, see it? I can keep my Donald Trump screensaver, yes. But it's from Lancaster, Pennsylvania, or one of those Pennsylvania towns I was speaking in right before the election in October. And when they asked me to moderate his town hall, I did one for J.D. Vance as well. Mm-hmm. Can I tell you, and you as a broadcast journalist professional, like, I was scared to death.
Yeah.
That's a big deal.
You want to do a good job.
Oh, heck yeah. I mean, you only get one shot. I did JD's first, so maybe that was my warm-up. I don't know. He was so incredible. It's the only time I've ever been around him. But I know that, you've been around this much longer than I have, obviously, in politics. But I feel like if you take a look back a year ago where we were, first of all, I could never have dreamt of being on a stage with Donald Trump to moderate a debate a couple months after he was nearly killed. It was an incredible, moment in my career, big picture. But as a country, as one of 300 million people in this country, think about where we were a year ago. Like, did you ever think, Scott Jennings, that we would be making as much progress as we have in the first 6-7 months of Donald Trump's presidency?
No. I mean, well, I had hopes and I had optimism. But it's amazing how far we've come, and he's got so many balls in the air. But I think about not just domestically, but internationally, the peace deals. We're on the brink of expanding the Abraham Accords in the Middle East. We've got the terror network in the Middle East that's been decimated, and Trump, I think, intervened at exactly the right time. I think his economic strategy, what he can do, plus then what the Congress can do. I mean, it's impressive how fast they move. They hit the ground running. He had the staff and the strategy in place. They wasted no time. Executive orders on day one, doing it all night long. I mean, it was obviously they knew that from the get-go time was short, and they've made the most of every day. Mm-hmm. And you can't control everything, but the one thing you can control is what you do with your own time, and they've maximized it. There's no doubt about it. It's amazing what they've been able to accomplish.
They made a big deal of, and rightfully so, those first 100 days and listing all of the things that have been done, executive orders along with many other things. And it just made me realize, and again, I'm not in this world as much, I'm like, okay, so this planning has been going on since the day that he, quote unquote, lost the 2020 election. And that's why they've been able to just take on all of this so rapid fire, right? I mean, they probably have been working this hard for 4 years.
I think that two things happened in the planning for this term. Number one, they were planning a campaign, but at the same time, they were planning what they would do if they were able to go back to the White House. And some of that was related directly to what Biden was doing. You know, all the actions that they took, the things they knew they wanted to unwind. So it was building over time. But I think one of the key issues, and I learned a little bit about this as I was writing my book about the first 100 days, is that the staff and the cabinet that they put in place this time is the exact right team for him. I think the first time they had good people, but I'm not sure they were all a match for his leadership style. And hanging around the West Wing a little bit and hanging around him a little bit in the first months of this administration, he is at the center of everything. The Oval Office, the Resolute desk, that's the nerve center of everything. And he is very hands-on with things and very the short details of things. Like he's in the middle of the decision-making. Total departure from the previous 4 years. And when you manage that way, which I think people do expect out of the president, you have to build a staff that matches your leadership style. They got it just right. And the all-stars around him, Bessent, Rubio, Miller, Susie Wiles, they were a perfect fit for what he was trying to do. I think it actually supercharged how fast they were able to move because he got the right team.
Compared to the first time where I like how you maybe separated that, where it was just maybe the right match, not the right match based on leadership style. And I love that he was also pretty open, I thought, with Joe Rogan before the election about how he maybe kept some of the wrong people around for too long because he actually has a heart and he wants to give people a chance. And there's loyalty there and a belief in someone until, in some cases, he said too long. So what do you think is the biggest thing that he learned from that first presidency that is better this time?
Well, I also think that they learned just how hard Washington works to try to swallow you up. I mean, look what happened to him in his first term. He takes over. There was an immediate plot to delegitimize his presidency, to essentially choke it and not allow him to have a full 4 years to execute. First it was Russia and then the other, things that they tried to do to him up on the Hill. It was one thing after another, all in service of the idea that he didn't win the election and therefore he shouldn't be allowed to operate. So official Washington is going to try to choke this and not. And so I think the lesson learned there was, listen, this is a tough place and the people who don't like me really don't like me. And so I have to show up with a game plan. I have to show up with the right team, and I have to show up knowing that there are going to be people who are trying to take us out every minute of every single day. And so I think learning that lesson the first time around put them in a place where they were not going to let any of these sort of institutional obstacles, that institutional Washington can throw at you, stop them this time. And look, you look 200 days now. I mean, they hit the ground. They smashed the opposition. I don't think the Democrats still have understood what has hit them, either in the campaign or in the Trump administration. And he's getting done basically everything he said he was going to do. He's executing on the things that he ran on. He's fulfilling his campaign promises. And it's been a sight to behold. He has not waited for anyone or anything. And I interviewed one of his political advisors for the book, and he told me that the reason he's doing so much so quickly is because he knows time is short.
Yeah.
You don't have forever. And once it's gone, it's gone. And so he has a lot of goals and no time to waste.
I feel like that was probably the plan coming in. But do you think that was magnified after the shooting in Butler, Pennsylvania, and how he said, okay, we can't wait on any of this?
I think that moment, and if you talk to Selena Zito, who's written the great book about Butler, and she spent a lot of time with him on these issues, I think it did change his perspective on life, on why he's here, on what his purpose is here. And, being afforded this opportunity to be in public service was only strengthened by the fact that, he came within a millimeter of dying. And so I think when you have something like that happen to you, it's jarring. But for him, I think it was jarring in a way that sharpened his focus on maximizing the thing that had been handed to him by the American people. You get 4 years to make changes for the better. And you can easily get caught up in the trappings of the office or the valedictory part of it. What I have observed of him is that he has gotten caught up in the details of it and the execution of it. And after 4 years of Biden, where, I think he was at best passive and at worst, things were happening that he had no idea what was happening. You have a hands-on president now with this really sharp focus that was, I think, sharpened even more by this near-death experience.
Yeah.
That's what it was. It was a near-death experience. I'm sure it had psychological impact on him that, is a daily reminder, if not but for 1 millimeter, you wouldn't be here. So make the most of it.
I saw 2 days later, watching from my couch at the Republican National Convention in Milwaukee. And of course, when he walked out and he had the bandage on the ear and people are, criticizing and saying how fake that was, whatever. But I'll never forget, to me, what felt like I was looking at Donald Trump in a way I'd never seen him before, and I had never spent time around him, really, very, very, very little. Watching his granddaughter, Kai, on stage, speaking about him at 17 years old. And then the close-up of him, that look on his face, you could see him trying to hold back. We've never seen a real emotional Donald Trump. I don't know how you couldn't be, any human being couldn't be after what he had just been through the last 2 days. But I felt differently about him. I was going to vote for him regardless. He's my guy, right? I felt differently about him at that moment. It very much humanized him.
Yes, I agree with you. I think the family aspect at the convention was a really effective thing for the American people to see. You want to know in your president, what kind of a person are they outside of politics? And for him, obviously, the interactions that he has and the pride that he has in his family is a big part of who he is. Hanging around him a little bit, like you, I hadn't spent a ton of time with him. I first spent some time with him in February. I went to Michigan with him on his 100th day in office. And observing him in meetings, observing him interacting with staff and others, the thing I came away with is the caricature of him that we get out of the media is not right. I lived through this a little bit when I worked for President Bush and Vice President Cheney. The caricature of them in the media, completely distorted. And I think the media largely hates Donald Trump, and so they've taken it upon themselves in many cases to paint a picture of him and his attitude and demeanor that just isn't accurate. And when you watch him up close, you see him with his family, you see him with the staff, you see him with people, you realize he's a funny guy. He cares what you think. I mean, I was in a couple of meetings where he was soliciting my opinion about things. I mean, He knows how to draw people in. Hospitality is in his blood. And it's a different, when you see it up close and you see him operate behind the scenes, you just get a different impression of him than what you might have been led to believe by the way the media covers him.
Yeah.
And so and maybe that's true about a lot of politicians, but for the ones they really hate, they try to make these caricatures of these people and turn them into something that maybe they really aren't. And so I was fortunate, and you've been fortunate to see him up close. And I wish everybody could. I do think it would change people's opinions, honestly, if you could see him the way he acts in an interpersonal setting.
Totally. And I'm forever grateful for those few moments that I share when I can without being like, let me tell you what I know, but just like, guys, remember, we are all human. Like, stop, slow down. I want people to hear your backstory because it's super important. I'm gonna get to that, but I think based on what you just said, let me just pick up from there because is it fair to say that the level of recognition for Scott Jennings has just skyrocketed even in the last 7 months since he's been in office?
Yes, really. I've been with CNN for several years now and been in the commentary business. But for me, the last year and a half, it's exploded. And it was really for two reasons. One, the presidential campaign. The 2024 campaign for us at CNN was so much different than 2020. In 2020, we didn't even have a real campaign. There were no events. The conventions were virtual. Even it just wasn't normal. And so the coverage of it was really muted. 2024, we were all in, debates and conventions and in-person things and big rallies. Like it was a normal campaign, which required a lot of coverage. And number two, the advent of this debating show that we have on the air now at 10 o'clock, which I have to give credit to Mark Thompson at CNN for thinking of it, but actually providing a platform for a conservative to debate it out during a campaign with other liberals in this case, or other Democrats, gave me a chance to perform and to get on a stage that was much bigger than I had experienced previously at the network. The campaign itself, with Trump in the middle of it, of course, drew intense attention from around the world. And so, it was a combination of those things. But I have to give credit to CNN for letting me do it and giving me the chance to speak for, in some cases half the country, or in some cases 80% of the country on some issues.
Yes.
And realizing that, hey, there's a marketplace for a conservative viewpoint and also for the debate. I mean, everywhere I go, I hear the same thing. We love the debates. And so I think it's working for us. But those things have changed my commentary role and my public profile in a profound way.
Do you like it?
Yes, I do love it. I love debating. The country is founded on debates. This is how we founded the country, debates and free speech. And so the more debates we have, the better off we are. It's how we work things out. We debate, we argue, we vote, and then we do it all again in 2 years. I mean, this is the essence of our political culture. So it's a privilege to participate from it. I'm from Dawson Springs, Kentucky, and the idea that I would be on the network someday debating the issues of the day on the network I grew up watching, when there were things going on in the world, it's a privilege. And I know conservatives give CNN a lot of crap, and I, of course, see all that. But I have to say, they let me do my thing, and they don't tell me what to say, and I don't really have a script. And so
Yes.
I get to go out there and be my authentic self, and it's been a lot of fun.
That's why it's working.
It's working.
And that's probably the only show on the network that's up, numbers-wise. I won't put that in, I don't know that for a fact, but I just know, unfortunately, how CNN had chosen to go over the last decade, where it used to be such a dependable news source, to your point about when you and I used to watch. So fine, that is what it is. For this show, I believe they're doing it the right way.
I think the authenticity in the debates are attractive. It's attractive to people. People want to hear authentic conversations.
Yes.
Now, sometimes the debates get a little heated, and sometimes, things happen out there and it seems a little tense or a little stressful. But that's okay, because some of the conversations we're having as Americans are a little tense and a little stressful. To me, the most important thing is, for an audience, is, do you feel like the people out there are being their authentic selves? And for me, I am. And that doesn't mean, you're always going to have all the answers, or you're going to, have, the sharpest, comeback every time. But what it does mean is that you're going to get an authentic reaction to the news of the day.
Yes.
From me, and an authentic rebuttal to whatever the Democrats and the liberals are saying that day. And you're going to get that from the other people too. To me, that's what audiences want right now. I think the era of scripted puppets is over, whether that's in politics or media. Audiences want authenticity. This is why Trump succeeds.
Exactly.
He's the most authentic guy in our politics. No one ever accused Donald Trump of being unwilling to tell us what's on his mind. He's speaking in that moment authentically about what's on his mind. There's an attractiveness to it. Even if you disagree, well, I'm getting the real opinion here. And there's a lot of value in that.
Sure. You say it's not scripted. I assume, based on years at network TV as well, like you have a rundown, what general topics you're going to touch on. Mm-hmm. You know who you're debating, who's on the set that night. Is that it? You know the topics and you form your opinion? I mean, and I do assume also, based on who is at the table with you that day, you kind of know which way they're going to go as well. But from there, it's organic.
You don't know what they're going to say exactly. You can sort of get an idea based on the news and based on what other people are saying throughout the day.
And based on what you know from those people that kind of say some of this.
And I spend all day long tracking it and kind of watching the discourse, so you try to get a feel for which way the debate is headed. But it is an organic conversation. Some people are pretty predictable. But you don't really know exactly what people are going to do or how they're going to react to you or what have you. So it is an authentic debate. You never really quite know how the moderator, Abby in this case, is going to set it up. You don't really know how that's going to go. And you don't always necessarily know what clips of people that they're going to play for us to key off of. So you basically know the topic and you basically know your sparring partners, and that's what you know. And then what you see is what you bring with you. The amount of research you've done, the amount of paying attention that you've done, and then your own willingness to just sort of give an authentic take on things, a hot take, as it were. And I think that's why it's working. We're not overly scripting these conversations, and people like it. Now, sometimes you go in there and you think, well, I really nailed it. And then sometimes you walk in and you think, oh, I wish I had thought of this. And, that happens a lot sometimes. But, of course, that happens in people's everyday lives.
Sure.
You think of, oh, I wish I had said that. So the best you can do is be well-researched and well-read and up on the news. Kind of drives me crazy when people come in and haven't really paid that much of attention to the news or even the topics that we're debating. And there's some people who sort of delve into just this hackneyed, recycled, anti-Trump insults. It's, okay, we've heard it all before. Do you have any actual insights about the news? Do you have any insights that are based on your experience or any advice for the people that you support? Or what? That, to me, is more valuable than people who just show up and just, I want to insult Donald Trump for 10 minutes and call it a day. And
it's shocking.
Boring.
It's shocking sometimes because when you're on a show like that, you better have all your I's dotted and T's crossed. It's very simple. Know what the news of the day is. And I remember when you had to remind Carrie Champion, someone I used to work with for many years at ESPN, about, no, this actually happened. Maybe you should watch the news before you come in here and talk about things. And I think, to me, that's shocking, but I'm not surprised quite often, depending on who's on that set. I know a question you get asked a lot is, how do you stay calm when people are spewing things that sometimes aren't even true? How do you maintain that mindset, that calmness? For the most part, you're pretty good.
Yeah, I've gotten bent out of shape a time or two. I try not to, though, because some good rules for punditry. Number one, you can't take it personally.
Right.
Number two, it's best to keep smiling. And number three, it's a little like golf. You got to hit the next shot. You can't dwell on the last one. And so once the panel is over and you go to break and you come back and do the next one, you got to hit the next shot. And so I try to keep these things in mind. But to me, it's a privilege to debate, and you just can't take it personally.
Yeah.
And you have to do it with a happy heart, even when the topics are tough, or even when it's a little thorny, in terms of the issue of the day, whatever that happens to be. You have to remember, it's a privilege to be here, and it's supposed to be fun. And I think for the audience, when we can laugh a little, even at ourselves, that shows a little humanity,
Yeah.
And I think it's more effective debating tactic to just take a deep breath, smile, give your point, chuckle a little if the other people are off the rails. And, that's often just as effective as screaming back at somebody.
Oh, that makes them crazy. And sometimes I don't need audio, but I watch your body language, and you'll just kind of sit back and you chuckle and you're like, okay, like it is pure entertainment. Are you aware?
TV. It's still TV.
But you're aware that you're doing that, and of course they take it as condescending, right?
Yeah. Well, I sometimes get a report. Somebody will run like the transcript of the show through a thing, and it'll tell me the word count of everybody. I'm almost always the least word count.
Wow.
Almost always.
Really?
Of the panel, yes.
Now, what does that say?
Well, I believe in the economy of words. I believe in the efficiency of arguments. I don't need to necessarily overtalk things. I have a point to make, or I have an argument to make, and I try to go in there and make it in the most efficient way possible. I don't need to give a long speech. I don't need to, filibuster it. But also sometimes I think when you're debating people, a little look or a little body language or a little bit of, because if you were in a real life setting with someone, you would be doing that with them. You might give them a look, or you might cross your arms or what have you. And so years ago when I started being a pundit, the lady who hired me actually gave me some advice. She said, just pretend you're at a dinner party and there are no cameras. How would you act in those settings?
Yeah.
That advice has stuck with me all these years. And so if you were in a setting like that, you would have a little body language with someone. You might give them a head nod. You might give them a funny look. It works, on the television show.
It does.
And I think it makes people feel like, hey, I'm in the room with these folks who are having a real conversation. But these are my authentic reactions. Like, I'm not, I don't plan to necessarily know when that's going to happen. But I sort of get lost in the debate. I get lost in the conversation. And so my body language is also part of that. I wear it on my sleeve a little bit, but I think it makes the debates that much more authentic. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I often say the least, but I try to say the most even when I'm saying the least.
Effective when you're saying, yes. Are there any relationships that you have or don't have with people on the set that are strained because of it, or you wouldn't call yourself friends because of the back and forth, and maybe they do take things personally?
Oh, I don't think so. Not all of us are personal friends or social friends all the time. Some of us are. I mean, my two best friends at the network are David Axelrod and Van Jones. And I'd actually also throw in Ashley Allison on top of that. Three Democrats who I have gotten to know over the years. I trust them. I think they are really good debaters. I think they're very experienced. I think when they talk, they're doing it from a position of experience and knowledge. So I respect that. And
Van Jones seems thoughtful.
he's a thoughtful guy.
Yes, and he listens.
He listens, and he's also willing to sometimes tell his own people things that they need to hear, but they don't want to hear.
Especially recently. I feel like he's done that a lot.
Well, on the Israel issue, he's taken on a lot of water. I mean, David Axelrod during the campaign last year was one of the first Democrats to say out loud, I think Joe Biden's not up to this. And they savaged him over that. I've heard Ashley, who's a very experienced Democrat operative, sometimes say hard things to her party about what they're tactically doing wrong. There's a lot of value in that. I think it takes a lot of backbone to do that.
Yeah, it does.
And so I just respect it, and I think they're all very smart. I love them all. I like to hang out with them outside of the set. Axe and I have done some baseball together, and Ashley and I and Axe and Van have all traveled together, going to the conventions and doing things on location. You sort of form a bond with your team. But I think of them as a team. I think of the community as a team. And so I don't begrudge anybody what they have to do on the air.
Yeah,
they have a point of view. They have to argue it out, and I know they're going to argue hard, and they know that's what I'm going to do. But at the end of the day, I think you can respect people and trust them, even if you don't necessarily agree with them. And they've certainly earned it out of me. And I love all three of them and would do anything in the world for them.
I love that. What a concept. You've posted pictures before.
I like to know that these people have, at a minimum, mutual professional respect for each other. And if they also happen to like each other and they can joke around with each other a little bit, to me, that enhances the overall watchability of the conversation. Mm-hmm. And so having that relationship with them it's been one of the best things about the job, truthfully.
Awesome.
Axe and Van and Ashley. And there are others, Ellie Honig, our legal guy, Harry Enton, our data guy. I mean, we have some really smart, funny people. I don't agree with everything they say on the air, of course, but you can trust them. They're honest and they're experienced. And those are the people that I think come across the best.
Mm-hmm. I'd like to get one moment that you went home and you're like, I crushed that. Like, I won the debate. And then another one where you're like, that was awful. I wish I could take that back. And you still think about.
So the one moment that I crushed that people still mention to me to this day on election night, when they finally let me out of my cage at 3:38 a.m. to admit to the world that Donald Trump had won the election, I gave a speech, a little bit of a monologue, a soliloquy about what had just happened and how this election had been the revenge of the average everyday American and how this had represented sort of the repudiation of the political information distribution complex. I think that moment, even though it happened in the middle of the night, to me was just one of my most authentic commentary moments. It's exactly how I felt. I'd been sitting there watching the returns all night. It had been building in me. And so I went out there and delivered it and really, I think, conveyed what millions of people were thinking about what had just happened in the election. So,
and if I recall, it was pretty silent on set.
Yeah.
When you were done.
Well, I mean, there were some melancholy people out there.
Yeah.
Axe and Ashley were out there and some others. And, they didn't want Donald Trump to win. And not only had he won, but then, I think the immediate aftermath of what had happened and why he had won was also crushing to the left. Watching him sort of crush these narratives. I mean, think about all the things you were told in October that just turned out to be totally false punditry, completely made up narratives. There's a poll in Iowa, the Puerto Ricans are mad, Madison Square Garden. I mean, all these things that, they were sort of throwing at the wall at the end, trying to make themselves believe maybe that she had a chance. None of it was true.
No.
And so him winning in the way he did, crushing all those narratives. So it wasn't just that he won. He crushed this narrative-driven campaign that they had tried to construct and had failed at. So, but, as I said that night, I've been on losing ends of campaigns. I worked for Mitt Romney in 2012. It sucks to lose. And so I had a little empathy for my sparring partners that night. But
that was a great moment.
Great
and I think
moment.
we all saw it.
yeah.
What's the other side?
Oh gosh, I've certainly said things about issues that I, have thought were funny in the moment, and maybe I regretted it. That's the thing about when you try to be funny. Sometimes it lands, and sometimes you just, you wish you could take it back because it didn't land. And so I'm not dodging this question, but I want to think about it because I've certainly laid a few eggs out there, and maybe wish I could take it back. But look, I've been at this now for over 8 years. And when you talk as much for a living as I do, I think you're bound to do. I try to minimize that, and I try not to get out over my skis too much. But I know I've laid a few eggs over the years.
We all do when you're in front of one of these, especially when it's live.
And you don't have a script.
No, and
You're
that's what
just
people
talking.
don't understand. I do think especially it's understandable, I don't care what side you're on, if it's you against the world. And that's really what it usually is on any CNN show, frankly. I mean, I liken it in some ways to The View, where back when it was the Meghan McCain days and how she was treated, or Elizabeth Hasselbeck. And I know those women quite well. And I believe there's some form of PTSD that they carry. I don't know that that's going to be the case with you at the end, but it is tough when it's 3, 4, sometimes 5, because sometimes the hosts also, the moderators also get involved instead of kind of staying in the middle like I believe they should. How does that feel?
In the beginning, look, I've been at it for a long time. The debating show is the most intense show. The Newsnight show is the most intense show I've ever been part of because it's the nature of the show to have people argue it out on live TV. And it's often tense topics, and they're often framed in a way that is well askew of how I would frame it. And so not only are you fighting a debating opponent, but you're also fighting the framing.
Yes.
So there's two things going on. So you feel like you have to correct the framing from your point of view, and then also then fight your opponent. So that's going on all at the same time. And in the beginning, I think it's natural to get worked up. It's natural to sort of to feel a little heated yourself. Over time, what I have learned is the best way to debate is to never, ever let it get the best of you in the moment. I mean, you can feel, ornery about it after the fact if you want. But the best way to debate is just to try to remain as calm as possible and not let someone get you into a position where you're showing more anger than skill or more emotion than knowledge. And so that's the main lesson I would give anybody about when new people come on for the first time. I always say, don't take it personally. Don't get overly emotional. Do not let them make you angry. You're here because you belong here. You have something to say, and don't let someone get you off your path. You're experienced. You have an opinion. If you let someone take you down an emotional path, then you're never going to get to why you're here.
Yes.
And it's a really good lesson for maybe a lot of interpersonal interaction, but for this show especially.
I just would implore any host out there, I don't care if it's sports or news, if you just present the facts and then let everyone at your table, at your debate desk, go from there, fine. I wish that we could have more of that on your show and many others, and that's just my opinion. Take it or leave it. You mentioned Mitt Romney and working on the Romney campaign. Gosh, that one sucked. It hurt. That one hurt.
It hurt. It hurt. I was in Ohio, and I've said this before on the air, and Obama's campaign, it was well run. They did what they had to do to win. I don't agree with everything they said and did, and certainly the way, again, go back to what we were talking about earlier, the way Mitt Romney was caricatured by the press in that campaign. I mean, I think back to the end of it. What was Mitt Romney's greatest sin? He said one day that he would like to appoint as many qualified women to his administration as possible. And that got turned into, Mitt Romney is history's greatest monster somehow. He had an awkward way of phrasing it, the binder's full of women. But the point was, I would like to do more for women, getting them into public service than anyone's ever done. Inarguably a good idea.
It's a good thing.
And he got turned into a monster over it. That's not who Mitt Romney is. He's no monster. He's probably one of the most moral, upright people that's ever run for president, who has a heart for everybody. And yet the caricature of him was
And
Just
how
ridiculous.
funny to contrast that with leading up to President Biden's choice for vice president. And I mean, it was going to be a woman of color, naturally, right? So it was okay to be specific with woman, black women, everybody else. Like that, isn't that offensive to, I don't know, Asian American women? Like, it's amazing how the rules change.
I think it should be offensive to women of color, and I'll tell you why. And I think he did the same thing to Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson.
Yeah.
When he said, I'm only going to pick a person with these attributes, and none of the attributes were academic achievement or professional achievement. They were only gender and race. I think you immediately put whoever you choose, you're putting them down. I mean, you're making it almost impossible for them to prove themselves. And he didn't have to do that. All he had to say was, I'm going to pick the most qualified person. And then you choose who you want to choose, and then they can stand on their own 2 feet. When you qualify it with those kinds of identity qualifications, you immediately put that person in a hole.
You do. And it's a DEI hire. It's basically what that is. I was called that for years, you know?
I took some grief from conservatives at the time when he appointed Jackson. I thought she was qualified. I thought her academic credentials, she was a little, lighter on the judicial side, but I thought her academic credentials, and she was obviously qualified to hold the job. Now, I think she's had some rough moments as a Supreme Court justice, and the other justices are obviously annoyed with her right now. But at the time, Biden said, I'm picking you because of these reasons, and none of it had to do with how qualified you were. That he should not have done that. And when he committed to Bernie Sanders on his vice presidential choice, I will choose a woman of color. Okay, well, you didn't have to make that commitment. Yeah. All you really need to do is say, I'll pick the most qualified person. It hurts whoever you're choosing.
It does.
And I don't understand why people on the left don't get that. And this is a main difference, I think, between liberals and conservatives. We want people to rise and fall based on talent, hard work, merit. And they truly want people to rise and fall based on identity politics, identity markers. And I think this is one of the reasons they're really struggling with the American people.
Yeah.
Because inherently, this is a country built on the idea that your hard work and your talent will take you as far as you will allow it. And that ideology throws that out the window, and I think people don't like it.
I'm so glad you've said that. I've said the same thing through the years, and I know it's cliche, but what did Martin Luther King say right here in Washington, D.C.? The content of my character, not the color of my skin. And it's amazing who chooses to forget that and ignore it. To me, it's devastating.
And it only works,
one way.
Only works one way, because when a prominent, African American conservative rises up, they're ignored or attacked relentlessly. I mean, Clarence Thomas is a great example of this.
Breaks my heart.
And I mean, he is one of the most important African American leaders in the history of this country. What he has achieved in his life, what he's done on the Supreme Court, what he represents, coming from his background. I mean, as poor as you can be, to rise up to the United States Supreme Court, and yet largely ignored by the liberals out there who are all about promoting African American contributions to this country, which there are many, but they conveniently leave out Clarence.
They do, and they leave out Condoleezza Rice, for example, who is one of my heroes. And just because she worked at the Bush White House, then therefore she is a sellout. All of the things, all of the words. Dr. Benjamin Carson, brilliant people who are still here today for us to learn from, but they are shunned overall for the most part by many on the left, and it's heartbreaking. I give them credit for continuing on and doing what they believe in, despite this, because many people would cave because it's a lot, and especially in a culture like that.
Shunned at best, and attacked relentlessly at worst. I mean, you think about the things that have been said over the years by the media and the left about Clarence Thomas.
Yeah.
Complete filth, garbage, outrageous attacks on him when he was nominated and all throughout his career. Totally undeserved. And
how can I someday get an interview with him? It's going to be hard when he's on the Supreme Court. I'm just in awe of that strength.
Yeah. It is a lot of backbone.
He could have
big shoulders,
gone away, write a book, get millions, go away. And he hasn't run from it.
No, he's leaned into it, and he's proven that you can stand up to the bullies. I think that's something about the left right now that is so troubling. It's so illiberal. If you don't have the right politics, we're gonna do everything we can do to make you miserable and to shut you up. And what they do to people of color and to women who they decide don't have the right politics, it's ugly, absolutely ugly. And of course, he's one of the biggest examples of it. But what he has shown is that you can rise above it, you can be better than them, and he's persevered through it all. He is one of the most consequential judicial leaders in the history of this country. And the fact that he is a African-American conservative, I think, sets such an example for people out there. They tried to crush him.
They did.
And he just rose above it. And it's beautiful.
It is. If I saw him, it would be inappropriate, but I'd be like, can I hug you? And that's what I did to Condoleezza the first time I met her. I got choked up, Scott. It was at like the 2008 ESPYs or something. And I got emotional. And she's like, who's this weird person standing next to me? But because of what she has overcome and the way in which she's done it with such class. And on such a lower level. I mean, the names that I'm called every day for being a Black conservative.
Yes. It's terrible.
I mean, it's shocking. My kids, the threats that have come to my children because of their mom's opinion, like it's sick. And I don't know many other communities that eat their young that way, that intentionally come after you if you don't go along with the group think, which is actually the opposite of what is preached. It's a whole thing, a story for another day, because I respect your opinion on it, and you've seen more than I have based on being in this world for a long time, longer than me. So we don't have time for that today. I do want to follow up on Romney being part of the Bush White House as well. For all those people who have only recently come to know and love Scott Jennings, which is over the last year and a half or so. I mean, you've been in this crazy politics world for
25 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, my first campaign was 2000 for George W. Bush. I graduated from college in 2000, University of Louisville graduate, Louisville Cardinal, and which broke my dad's heart a little. Big Kentucky Wildcat guy, so we're still dealing with that in the Jennings household.
Wait, no, tell that full story.
Well, I'm like the first Jennings to go to college and got this scholarship to go to the University of Louisville. And my dad was a little bit out of shape about it. I mean, I think he was ultimately fine with it, but the idea that we're going to have a Cardinal and not a Wildcat in the Jennings household it did take some massaging when it happened. But I went to college. I was a reporter. I worked, probably spent more time at WHAS radio than I did in my classes at the University of Louisville. Thought I was going to be a journalist. But then in 2000, got the opportunity to go work for Governor Bush, and got into politics, and I've been in it ever since. I never lost my taste for media. I never lost my taste for radio. I love radio. And so
now you have your radio show.
I have a radio show on Salem every day from 2 to 3. And I knew I would always get back to it. But I did put in a lot of years. Two Bush campaigns, a stint in the Bush White House, really part of Mitch McConnell's campaigns going back to 1996 when I licked envelopes as an 18-year-old, when we still licked envelopes in campaigns. And I've been fortunate to have a lot of the campaign experiences that I've had, and really have lived through all the evolution and undulations of the Republican Party over a quarter of a century.
So it's kind of the best of both worlds, isn't it? As a journalism major who loved the media, loved that side of it, and now politics, I mean, you get to blend all of it together. Who knew, I guess, back then, but look.
I've been very fortunate and very lucky, and have been grateful for everybody I've worked for. And I get asked sometimes, how do you go from, Bush to McConnell to Romney to Trump? I mean, you're Trump's guy on CNN. And, I think the through line for me is very clear. Everybody that I've ever worked for, I always believed were the greatest defenders of Western civilization in the moment. They were great defenders of common sense, and they were great defenders of free speech. And to me, when I think about what Donald Trump is doing, that's his platform. We're defend Western civilization, we're promoting common sense in our culture, and we're defending free speech for everybody. I have felt that way about the Republican Party my entire life. There are big differences between George W. Bush and Donald Trump. There are big differences, and obviously differences of opinion and personal opinion between Mitch McConnell and Donald Trump. But if there are three things that I think have been the hallmarks of everyone I've ever worked for, it's those three. And today, I think we're in a fight for the future of the West. I think we're in a fight for common sense, and I certainly think we're in a fight for the future of free speech. And Donald Trump is leading that fight right now as well as anybody could.
What's your relationship now with Mitch McConnell?
I have been friends with him since, and I consider him to be a mentor of mine since I was 16 years old when I first met him. Coming in, I was in a high school program and met him, and then I applied to be a McConnell scholar at the University of Louisville, and was a McConnell scholar for 4 years. It's a nonpartisan scholarship program. I'm the son of a garbage man and a factory worker from West Kentucky. If not but for McConnell's scholarship program, I don't know that I would have been able to go to college. And so he changed the trajectory of my life with that scholarship program. I've been proud to support him. He's retiring. He's had the most amazing career in Kentucky political history and beat Democrats 7 times, held open that Supreme Court seat, which I think helped deliver the presidency to Trump, and then they worked together to deliver the Supreme Court. I think it's hard to measure the impact that he has had. And my relationship with him is every time I'm in town, I go say hello, I go see him, I call him often, we text a lot. I think his leadership for the party and for the state of Kentucky, it's hard to measure how consequential it's been.
And it's hard to watch his health decline right now.
Yeah.
How is he?
He's okay. He's getting up there. He's 83 years old, I guess now. And, he suffered polio as a child, and he has the leg that he has struggled with. But truthfully, I talk to him a lot, and I think he's as sharp as ever. And his insights on issues. And, if you want to know how something is going to turn out, ask Mitch McConnell. He's usually got a pretty good beat on how things are going to turn out. And, interestingly, in some of these, fights this year, I think coming into the Trump administration, people were assuming he was going to reflexively be in opposition to Trump. He helped him pass the big, beautiful bill. He's voted for most of his nominees to things, has supported him on most of his immigration and policy initiatives. I mean, he's just as he was in the first term, I think he's really tried to help make the Republican president successful. There's one thing about McConnell that people, I think, fail to understand is motivation is, I want as many Republicans in office as possible, and I want them to do as well as they can do. And that's what he spent most of his career doing. Now they don't obviously get along personally, although I guess Trump did have him over at the White House the other day when they did the Senate thing for the big, beautiful bill. But that's okay. I mean, you don't have to love everybody you work with.
Correct.
And I think most of the time they've actually worked together to get drastic, monumental things done for the country. The courts and the tax cuts in the first term don't happen without McConnell and Trump aligning and being partners.
Yes. And that, at the end of the day, that's what matters. I think no matter which side you're on, listen, the question of term limits has come up a lot, and rightfully so, when you look at Mitch McConnell, when you look at even Nancy Pelosi, when you look at, in a different way with Joe Biden. And then you can look at Donald Trump at 79 years old, right about the same age as many of these people. And he hasn't experienced the things that we have seen in front of cameras, especially with Mr. McConnell over the last couple of years. And I think that's where sometimes I struggle, because I appreciate endlessly all the good and people who don't want to quit, because they want to continue to help the American people until probably the day they die. And then when I see, from a human level, Scott, struggling, the episodes that he has had, what's that line? And as a human being, as a wife, as a friend, we said this about Jill Biden too, maybe different, but when is enough enough? And when should people consider, and I know it's case by case, stepping away at least, because that has to affect the job that they're doing?
I think it's probably different for everybody. You mentioned President Trump. He holds the only office that we do term limit. The other ones we don't.
Exactly.
I've never been a huge proponent of term limits, because I guess I just think voters can limit your term anytime they want to.
True.
And so we have term limits. They're called elections. And again, I think it's different for everybody. I think Trump is more spry than virtually everybody in D.C. And certainly runs circles around what Joe Biden was doing for the last 4 years. I think on the individual members of Congress, I do think you have to exercise a certain amount of individual personal responsibility on it. And I think you have to ask yourself all the time, am I the right person to hold this job? It's interesting in his campaigns, I've heard McConnell make the argument before, look, I don't own this seat, the people do.
Yeah.
And I think that's a true thing. And ultimately, the people have to decide. And McConnell obviously has decided to retire and not run again. And I think that was the right thing to do. He made the decision, came to the conclusion that it was time to move on and pass the torch. And now they'll do that in Kentucky.
I'm glad for him. Again, I don't care about the politics.
Yeah.
I didn't care about the politics with Joe Biden, Scott. Mm-hmm. I didn't. I interviewed him in 2021, right after he took office. And of course, it was like this, not in person because of COVID. And I am no doctor, no scientist, no nothing. But I could feel it and I could see it. And there is personal responsibility, if we truly do care about the people that we are representing, to step away at some point, even though it is case by case. And it upset me to see Mr. McConnell struggling those times. And again, I support him, but it still made me sad.
As someone who's known him since, he was 16 years old, that's when I first met him. I mean, it was hard.
Yeah.
Because you don't want to see people that you love, struggling in a public setting that way. And now, that having been said, my interactions with him lately is as sharp as ever. He's totally bounced back. I think,
Good.
Like anybody else in their 80s, they all suffer the same sorts of things that, you would expect with hearing and, mobility and things of that nature. But
okay.
My view is he is in great shape, doing a good job, made the correct decision. And, if there were a Mount Rushmore of Kentucky politics, I mean, it's going to have on there Abraham Lincoln, Henry Clay, Alvin Barkley, and Mitch McConnell.
That's awesome.
He's the longest serving senator in Kentucky history. He was the longest serving Republican leader in Senate history, and maybe the most consequential legislative leader of the last century in the United States. So I am, for Kentucky, we're a small rural state. We don't, to punch above our weight, you have to elect people who can punch above their weight. McConnell did that for us.
Yes.
We're not California or New York. We don't
Right.
send all the people to Washington. We only have 6 congressmen and 2 senators. And so we've been fortunate to have people who've, I think, been genuinely skillful and able to amass power because, for a small rural state, you sort of depend on those kinds of folks.
When will you be deciding about a political run in Kentucky? I mean, it would be a natural, you can't replace, but natural to have the young man that he mentored for all these years run for Senate in the state of Kentucky and be, come on, Scott.
I don't really have anything to say about that right now. Look, I won't lie. Since I was a little boy, my grandfather, Democrat, in West Kentucky, he was an elected official, and I looked up to him and was very close to him. So it's something that has been on my mind since I was a little boy, riding around in my grandfather's station wagon when he was serving as a magistrate in Hopkins County, Kentucky. But I have to be honest, right now, with my CNN platform, my radio show, I have this book coming out in November.
What's the name of the book?
It's called A Revolution of Common Sense.
Okay.
How Donald Trump stormed Washington and fought for Western civilization. And you can pre-order it today. It comes out November the 18th. But I have all these things going on that I have been working towards for a very long time. And so, the thought of throwing all that out and doing something else is a little jarring, truthfully.
And you have 4 boys?
And I have 4 boys, 16, 11, 9, and 7. And so, and we've got 35 chickens in the backyard and 3 dogs and all kinds of things going on in the Jennings household. So I actually respect the heck out of anybody who has the guts to put their name on a ballot.
Yeah.
Even the people I vehemently disagree with. It's no small thing to run for office. Public service is a calling. I've heard the calling. It's in me. I want to do it someday. I don't know when. But I respect the heck out of people who sign up to run for office, whether they're Democrat or Republican, young or old, or have a good chance or a terrible chance. When you sign those papers to say I'm going to put my name forward before the voters, it takes a lot of guts. And I respect the heck out of it. And would never, ever enter into a decision like that lightly because I think elections are one of the most sacred things that we do. And when you put your name on the ballot, you're telling the people, you can trust me. Put your trust in me. That's a bond, That's a bond with millions of people.
I know many people who would probably go try to become a resident of Kentucky to make sure and get you in office at some point. That America needs that for sure. Is your dad still here?
Yeah, Dad is here and actually stays with us in Kentucky and
Really?
in our house just outside of Louisville some, and spends time with the boys. And my dad, interesting guy, big Clinton guy, biggest Clinton guy I knew when I was growing up.
No way.
He was a big labor guy. My grandfather was a Democrat. I come from a family of Democrats, and my dad was the first person, though, to tell me Donald Trump was going to be the next president. First guy. And I said, what are you talking about?
Oh, my gosh.
And he
In
said,
16?
15.
So when he came down the golden escalator.
He said he's going to be the president. And I was like, come on. And he said, I'm just telling you. All my friends are talking about it. He's going to be the president. And I, of course, like everybody else, was like, you're full of crap. But what wasn't the first and wouldn't be the last time in life that my dad was right and I was wrong.
Wow.
And I think about that conversation a lot, actually, because from that point forward, how much has changed in our politics and in our culture, all thanks to President Trump. When I was in the Oval Office pitching him on the book in February, I was sitting there thinking, about the time my dad said, Trump's going to be the president. And I'm sitting in there thinking, yep, he's the president. I don't know who was running the country the last 4 years, but I sure as hell know who's running it right now.
How cool that your dad, a Democrat, saw that and predicted it. And to watch you, no matter how old we get, we're still our kids, our parents' little kids, right? Little Scotty, to think of him and how he views you right now and what you are doing with integrity and class and grace and strength as the first Jennings to ever go to college. What are those conversations like with your dad right now?
Well, we're spending a lot of time together right now, and I'm so grateful for it. I love my dad. He was a Democrat. Whenever I tell this story sometimes in front of people, and he always reminds me, don't forget to tell them that I'm now a Republican.
Okay.
But he is like a lot of those working class, rural Democrats. Their parents were Democrats. They came from the party of FDR. And over time, the Democratic Party left them behind. They stopped caring about working class people. They stopped caring about rural people. They stopped caring about people with those kinds of values. My dad is a textbook example of this. And Trump spoke to him in a way I had never really seen a politician speak to my dad. I mean, my dad got it, and he got my dad. And interestingly, when I went with the president on Air Force One to Michigan for his 100th day in office rally, when we were leaving the plane, the president said, "Do you want my hat?" And I said, "No, but I'd like to take it anyway and give it to my dad." He said, "That's terrific. What's your dad's name?" And so he wrote a note to my dad on the hat. And I told the president, my dad was the first person that told me you were going to be the president. And he gave me that hat, and I took it to my dad the next day. And it meant a lot to me to be able to do that for him because he, my dad and I, we've had a great relationship over the years. But, because of life and things that you do in your life, you go through these periods where you're seeing your parents a lot and then you're not seeing them a lot. And so the older I've gotten, the more I have realized that relationship with your parents and them having a relationship with your children, there is no substitute for that, and can't put a price tag on it. And so being able to share some of this political history that we're living through with my dad, who's obviously so into it, has been...
he must be so proud.
Well, I hope so. I'm trying to make him proud.
Yeah.
And I hope that's true.
And now you've got Winston and 3 other boys who are watching everying you do.
Yep, Winstagramm's over there. He's number 2. Everett is number 1. Thatcher is number 3, and Harlan is number 4. And we got a lot of destruction and mayhem in the Jennings household, but we're raising 4 boys in this world. And as a parent, as you know, what are you trying to do every day? Everything you can do for your kids. Somebody once told me, if you want to do something nice for someone, do something nice for their kids. When you have kids and you're raising them, you realize that is the best advice.
It's everything.
It's everything. They're everything. And so when you're getting up to take your beatings, on some panel or get yelled at or, whatever, get on a train at 5 a.m. or go get on a plane and fly to do whatever, there's really only one reason to do it.
That's it.
Trying to give them a better life and trying to give them a country that they can be proud of. And I think about them a lot and about the country's future, and I don't want them to just grow up in a rich country. I want them to grow up in a good country that believes in certain things. And so everything I do professionally is really geared around them. And so Dad's not home a lot, and I sort of live with that every day. But at the same time, the reason I'm doing it is to try to build them a future that they can live in, and it'll be better than the one I inherited. That's the sort of the goal of generations. Leave the country a little better than you found it.
You are doing that, and you are doing it brilliantly. I know you hear it all the time, Scott Jennings, but thank you. And you're representing us in more ways than you know. And maybe, yes, with all the things you say and the facts that you spew and the people you shut down, but it does take courage to go into that lion's den every single day.
Well,
And not many people are made for it. So thank you for not ignoring that. Like, we need you. I'm sure the people bigger than me have told you that. The president has told you that.
well, I'm flattered by your comments. I'm trying to do an honest job with it every day and give people the best defense. And that's ultimately the thing about debates. Half the country sees the world the way we see it. They have conservative values. They deserve an analysis and a defense of what's going on every day, just as much as the other half does. And you want to give them that as much as you can. And I'll just say, I'm grateful for you, what you do, and this sort of what you're doing, pioneering in this new media space. And look, there's no secret about this. The legacy media is struggling, and people are looking for honest people that they can listen to. You're one of them. People, your show and the people you interview, and there's a few people popping up out there who I think are doing such an honest job of having honest conversations and delivering information in a way. It's attracting audiences. It's authentic and it's real. And so I just want to congratulate you on that, because it takes a lot of guts to take some of the stands you've taken in the arena in which you work. Goodness gracious.
Thank
It takes
you.
a lot of guts.
When we get backed into a corner, sometimes a whole other animal comes out that you didn't know existed within yourself. And I think it's at some point, and it is an age thing too. You get to a certain age, you're like, where you realize that it's bigger than you. And if you choose to stay silent, that's fine. But I think there's a price to pay, especially when you have your children watching you. And I know this is bigger than me and you and really everybody. It's for our families and our great-great-grandkids and the future of this country. And it's just having conversations. That's the problem.
What do you want to have people say about you? She had the courage to tell the truth. That's a great legacy. That alone is a great legacy. The truth has never gone out of vogue. We have to have people courageous enough to tell it. And so when I see what you're doing and others in our community, I'm very proud of it. It's an important thing. And there's a real hunger for that out there. I think it's one of the reasons Trump got elected.
Yep.
I think it's one of the reasons that we've seen this explosion of new media content out there and platforms that have popped up. people are desperate for the gatekeepers to go away and to get at the truth, or to get at real, authentic conversations. And so I think this moment is, we're just living through massive upheaval in the information distribution space, and I think it's ultimately going to be for the better. But I also think competition makes everybody better.
Absolutely.
It makes everybody
in sports
better.
and everything. I got to get you to your train. You ran the yellow ribbon?
Yeah.
For any reason in particular?
Yep, because I've been wearing it every day since October the 7th. I think what's going on in the Western media right now in terms of the propaganda campaign around the war in Gaza is terrible. There are 50 hostages there. 2 of them are Americans, citizens. I think we've largely forgotten about it. And I wear it every day. Even though we don't debate it every day, I wear it every day because I just want people to know that there's still somebody that can tell the difference between right and wrong on this issue. What happened on October the 7th is one of the biggest acts of barbarism and savagery we've seen in modern history. And there are hostages there. It's not okay. And I don't know, this whole story has touched me in a way that few have, because of the barbarism that took place, the murders the rapes, the pillaging of these little farming communities, the mutilation of people, treating them like animals. We have to be able to tell the difference between right and wrong. To me, that's what the pen represents. Memory of the hostages, and just that we have to be able to tell the difference between right and wrong in this world. The defense of Western civilization depends on that. So I wear it, and Van Jones wears it, and I'm proud of him for that. And I'm proud to stand up for these hostages whenever we get the chance to debate the issue. And I'm sort of mortified at the propaganda campaign that's going on to make people, up is down, right is left, red is blue. It's crazy to me what's going on around this. But my center here is on these poor hostages. I met some of the parents of the hostages that are still there and heard their heartbreaking stories. And if you have talked to the people who are impacted, if you've seen it for your own eyes, if you've seen the footage of what happened on October the 7th, I don't know how you could see it any other way.
This is why we need you every day. Now get to New York City. You have a show to do tonight.
I do.
Thank you for being you.
Thank you very much.
God bless you. And Winston, thanks for hanging with us.